So today, our short 5-minute concept piggybacks on what our real world rule of money was last week in looking at and studying and talking about the X curve, or the law of increasing wealth, law of decreasing responsibility. And just to review that, when we're young, our wealth is down near the 0 line. And as we get older, the hope, and with the right plan, our wealth can increase as we get older. Our responsibilities, meaning our debt, our children, our income, providing for a family, those responsibilities are high. Especially if our wealth is low, those responsibilities get even higher. And the idea behind this is the older that we get, those responsibilities generally decrease over time, and our wealth will generally and hopefully increase into our older years, where if we get to the point where our wealth is significantly higher than those responsibilities, here above the word older, then the responsibility is what life insurance replaces when we don't have wealth, can decrease over time, and those responsibilities decrease. And what we're going to be talking about today is the inverse X curve, where what happens from older until death. So if we're younger, we get started in our 20s, we grow our wealth in our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, our 60s. The hope is that our debts are eliminated, kids have all moved out of the house and don't need any help anymore, and we've become self-insured, and now it's time to retire. So we're in our 60s, we decide to retire, and we're living off of our income, and the hope of that wealth line is that it kind of levels off, where it's not going to necessarily continue increasing, because we're going to be taking money from that wealth to live on. And if someone's working with a financial consultant, planner, fiduciary, whatever, they're meeting with a financial person and they're calculating how much can I take from my retirement, how much can I take from this wealth and live on it for the rest of my life. And usually those calculations are done off of 1 life or 2 lives, or there's an annuity of some kind that they're calculating income. They have a pension, and so they're trying to calculate how to overcome the #1 fear of retirees is running out of money. Has actually become the #1 fear in America. An insurance company did a study, and 61% of retirees fear over death, fear over public speaking, fear over the loss of a child or grandchild was the fear of running out of money. And so a lot of the time, the thing that they don't think, which leads us into our discussion today, more specifically, of what we'll get into when we look at a product and a concept in the financial industry, is something that happens that can be kind of scary in a way, that then becomes the inverse of this X curve. Is what would happen if all the planning of their wealth has been around living in retirement, husband and wife, at home, traveling, all the things that they want to do. But what would they do if one of them ended up in a long-term care facility? The long-term care facility is going to be a retirement home of sorts, where there are 6 activities of daily living. A couple of them include feeding yourself, getting from your bed to a chair, being able to take yourself to the bathroom, get yourself dressed. And if people cannot do 2 of these 6 activities of daily living, then that's what is kind of a trigger for when they would need long-term care. Well, the problem with long-term care, or any care of sorts, is it wasn't calculated into their retirement budget. And so then what happens, especially if one spouse is continuing to live at home and the other one has to go into a home, what happens is now the inverse of this X curve, where the responsibilities start to go up. The responsibilities of care, the responsibilities of added cost, the responsibilities of health, And then what happens to the person's wealth is it starts to decrease more rapidly than they had planned, and this creates obviously a significant problem. Is spouse number one is still at home, still with regular expenses, still with the regular things that they need to do on a day-to-day basis. They have the other spouse, spouse number two, that's in a home or is needing in-home care and have additional expenses, which then decrease the wealth even further. And obviously, since people don't know when death is, it can be very, very unpredictable. And so similarly to the X curve on the left is the gap between our wealth and our responsibilities is life insurance. And then the X curve on the right, the gap between our responsibilities and our wealth is where long-term care kicks in. So that is our real-world rule of money for today. Is from last week. There's the X curve that helps people understand their need for life insurance. Then when we piggyback that with the X curve on the right, or the inverse X curve, is helping people understand the need for long-term care insurance.